can't hear you.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to The Buzz with Dr. Beryl Cothran. I am Dr. B, and I'm so excited to have each of you sharing with me on this eve. Hello to everybody. It's Terrific Tuesday. I have all these affirmations that I make: Miracle Mondays, Terrific Tuesdays. Tomorrow is Winning Wednesday, Thankful Thursday, Faithful Favor Friday, you name it. But it's Terrific Tuesday, and I'm sharing my Terrific Tuesday with special guest and author Patrick Marche Brown. Hi, Mr. Brown.
Hello, hello, hello.
How are you?
Great. I like your shirt.
Well, thank you. You saw I tried to let everybody see my shirt.
I saw that. I see you speaking loud through your shirt. That's good.
I'm grateful to have you to be here with me on this eve. Just grateful to have you to share with us. We're just kind of gonna be a little loose around the edges on this eve. And I wore this shirt. I don't know if everybody realizes that, but I wore this shirt. I don't think it's anybody that doesn't know what 8 minutes and 46 seconds actually means. We've had quite a year in 2020, and so we know that that was the time that Mr. George Floyd would be under the knee of one of our police officers. So I thought, reading your book and being able to review your book, that this was really the type of, this is what I should have worn tonight.
Yeah, good choice. I like it.
It says Black men are essential.
Yes, Black men are essential. My good friend Tracy Harris makes these shirts.
Tracy Harris. Shout out to Tracy Harris on tonight. Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you for, again, thank you for being here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, Patrick Brown. I was born in Shreveport, Louisiana. I'm a real estate investor. I'm a independent car lot owner.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm an author. I'm a graduate of your alumni, Wiley College.
Woo! Wiley College, Wiley Wildcats.
And I'm just a citizen of Shreveport, trying to inspire young boys and young men and older men and just people in general.
Wow. Well, you definitely accomplished that this year. I hope what is going to turn out to be a wonderful interview. I'm just super duper excited about Lost Black Boys. And of course, you have your copy of the book. I do too. So Lost Black Boys, you got to get your copy, y'all. That's all I can tell you. And it says, for lost Black boys who had to find themselves when no one else could. So I think you're going to change the narrative on that, because you're helping them. You're becoming what you didn't have. Is that right?
We got a little piece for a second. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes, I'm definitely providing something to them that I wish I had gotten. Just like a roadmap, a cheat code. I call it a cheat code in the book.
Right. And we're going to talk about your cheat code. For me, I talk about it being my winning code. And you do have a cheat code, because one of the things that with your cheat code, as you call it, you did recipes and you used to send them out. And that was one of your cheat codes. That was the way that I'm sure I know you got my mom with the cheat code. You know, she loved your recipes. She looks for them every month. And so that was one of your cheat codes we can talk about later. But again, I'm here with Patrick Brown, who's an entrepreneur, who is a graduate of Wiley College, and also who is author of Lost Black Boys. Thank you for tuning in on this evening if you're just tuning in. I want to talk about, you have 8 chapters to the book. First of all, do you have a chapter that is your favorite chapter?
Favorite?
Uh-huh.
Most important, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be manifestation.
Manifestation.
Yeah.
I figured you would say that, because that's where everything has kind of evolved. Am I right?
Yes. 100%.
Yes, manifestation. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let's start to go through your chapters here and just kind of see. It's a very it's an inspiring book, even for women. So I want to speak to women on this evening. You may be thinking, well, what can this book do for me? I advise every woman to get the book. When I read Michelle Obama's Becoming, I thought that every man should have gotten the book. While we are being helped as women, I think that the book also helps the whole family. I mean, she had like, I think about 3 parts to the book. And as you graduate through that book with her, you start to see the value of becoming, you start to see the value of how men, how the family structure should be. And I kind of was, as I read your book, I was kind of, that was one of the books I thought about. And I also thought about Sophia Nelson's book, The Woman Code. I thought about that book, which I think men should also read so that they can understand women. So your book, I thought it kind of ranked there as far as books that I've read in the last couple of years. Chapter 1 talks about no fear. Everything that you're scared of is scared of you. Tell me about that.
Well, I mean, as a kid, we all have fears, even as an adult. And, and you realize that those fears aren't real. They're just made up things in your mind.
Right.
They're not real. And once you show boldness to whatever that is, it goes away. And that's it. Pretty simple.
It's pretty simple. I thought I wrote in the margin of my book on that when you said a lot of those things still scare me. I don't show it and nobody knows. Well, guess what? The world knows now. So now we all know. But I have a question for you. How can we avoid living inside of our fear? You talked about in chapter 1 how we shouldn't live inside of our fear. So how do we live outside of fear? What were some of those things that you did to avoid living trapped by fear?
Well, I had a church going family. They put God in me. And so I always knew that whatever thing I was scared of, my God was bigger than that. And that's what I always held on to, no matter what. I can remember times as a kid being home by myself and it's thundering and lightning. And I just get under the cover and close my eyes and start talking to God. And everything kind of goes away.
And that's true. We talk about, and of course, in the Bible, it says that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but he's given us love, power, and a sound mind. And then Mr. Brown hits another important point. He says, he talked about how that we have to, you bring to the table another scripture that we are more than conquerors through Christ Jesus. But the other word that I was thinking about is greater is he that's in me. And I'll talk about that later because you talk about the road, that map, that life map being on the inside of us. And so the big is on the inside of us, and that's very important. You shared about 2 of your friends that I would like to talk about. You talked about several of your friends, but in particular in chapter 1, you talked about Rufus White and you talked about Ken, for which I feel like we got several lessons, and that's very important today. As a pastor, as a mentor, as a person who's just passionate about people, it bothers me, it actually grieves me that to hear that a 17-year-old was shot here in Shreveport just within the last couple of days. And this has been an ongoing saga that we've seen in our city. And from what I understand, that's happening all over the United States of America. So tell me about Rufus and May 24th. I graduated high school May 24th, 26 years ago. And this year, someone that I knew is now gone. Tell me about that.
He was murdered. Rufus was a good friend of mine. I met him in kindergarten, actually. And he did almost 19 years in prison. He had been out about a little bit over a year. And while in Texas, he was, caught in a situation that he probably shouldn't have been in. I don't know enough about it to speak on it, but I do know that he was murdered. And so it's just a sad situation that this young man had did all this time in jail, got out and was working and still couldn't escape, being killed. And unfortunately, it affects everybody, not just him. It affects his friends, his parents. It affects us as a Black race. We deal with so much pain, just a sad situation.
For your friend to make it home and to get, leave the prison system, to survive all those years, just to come home to be murdered.
Yes, very.
It's gotta be tough.
Very tough.
It's gotta be tough. And, you know, I talked about how 26 years ago, I was graduating high school on May 24th, and here it is, 26 years later. I'm thinking about that time and I'm kind of celebrating. And then you're losing a friend.
Yes.
That we both knew. You're losing a friend. So it goes to show how simultaneously one of us could be celebrating while the other is grieving, you know, and we have to come to some place of being centered, which I think your book does for us. It helps us to get centered. Now, one thing I thought interesting was that both you and you grew up in Hollywood, which ain't the Hollywood that people are thinking about, right? So you grew up in Hollywood, Louisiana, not just Hollywood, Shreveport, but Hollywood, Louisiana. So, kind of a rough place, right?
Yes, yeah, definitely rough. 100% rough.
And Rufus grew up in a place that was pretty rough, right?
Rougher than Hollywood, yes.
Yeah. So I thought it was interesting that you all met in kindergarten. Now, where did you go to? Where were you in school at that time?
Our Lady of the Blessed Sacrament.
All right, Our Lady of the Blessed Sacrament.
Yes, a Catholic Black school.
Yeah, a Catholic African American academy for children, and I'm excited about that because what it says to me is that though you came from Hollywood and he came from a rougher, tougher place, there was an adult somewhere who wanted to do better by the next generation. Have you ever thought about that? That the two of you came and you talk you talk in the book about how, you know, this little guy came up to you and you were just like, at that age, you still had to just kind of like be bold. He taught you how to be bold.
100% taught me that.
Yeah. So tell me about Ken.
Ken was the next door neighbor of the man who was kind of like my grandfather figure that raised me. It was actually some older cousins who used to keep me a lot. I thought he was my granddaddy because I was over there all the time, but Ken stayed next door. And so he was my childhood friend from my neighborhood childhood.
And Ken was drowned or?
He drowned. He drowned there was a pond we used to go swimming in the neighborhood that we shouldn't have been in. It had acid in the water and it got in his lungs.
Wow. Reading that, I thought about how lessons of life often come through death. So it's kind of oxymoronic, but we get some of those lessons. And so after I started to read about Rufus, after I started to read about Ken, I started to think to myself that you were taken 2020, somewhere during pandemic time, you decided that you were going to kind of sit. As counselors, we say that we encourage people to kind of sit in it. Whatever your pain is, whatever you're going through, in order to conquer it, you've got to be able to be vulnerable and sit in it and face it. And so it seems like you were taking your time in pandemic and you decided to pause. Sometimes life calls for a pause, and it seems like you paused and you began to write. What were you thinking at the time that you started to author this book?
That's a really good question. What was I thinking? Well, I was thinking about my two Black boys, and I was thinking about what can I do to create a map for my sons and other Black boys who are going to go through these things in this book, because it's life. And I've read a lot of self-help books, but I've never ran across any that specifically target Black boys and Black men that spoke directly to us. And so with it being so many fathers missing, that motivated me to create this map during this time. And, you know, we had a lot of time on our hands. So a person like me sitting still that long, my mind is going. So there came a book.
There came a book. It just seems like some of these things were kind of lying within you and you just took the opportunity. And again, I have to say thank you for doing so. and your sons, Austin and Chandler, you have some stories that you talk about with your sons, and we'll talk about them. And from, amazingly, we're going to talk about them in chapter 4. But moving on to chapter 2, you talked about outwork everybody. Now, one thing that Patrick Brown has, or shall I say, Pat Brown has this hustle spirit. So one thing I've noticed about your hustle is your hustle has an element of faith. And there's a lot of young men out there who have a little, and you talk about what all of us love to do, and we see our sons doing at that age, and that's selling candy or taking some sort of pathway to entrepreneurship. And we have a lot of young men who are out there and they want to get their hustle. And I've seen you support by buying a t-shirt or just giving someone money, just whether it doesn't matter to you what the product, you just support their spirit. Tell me a little about that hustle spirit that you have and how you integrate faith, because you really have just had to integrate your faith and your hustle.
Well, I had an advantage. That advantage was my grandmother. My grandmother, as a child, made me feel like I could do anything. Made me feel like I was the best in everything I did. And so that kind of put this confidence inside of me.
Yeah.
To kind of be able to attack anything. And so a lot of kids are not fortunate to have that. Some kids just need to have one person believing in them and letting them know, hey, you're somebody, you can do it. You can do it. I got that at an early age. So it's still to this day.
Wow. So that made me think about my grandmother. There were just some things that, she believed, and so I believed them, because grandmothers they don't lie, they tell the truth. So I believed it. And so just think if we had people who would do that, who would just speak into the lives of children, and the first place that you got your first prophetic word was from your father. I think that's important. When your father tells, I wanted nothing more. I remember coming home with my report card, and I laid my report card on the table, and I was so super duper excited. And so if you know my dad started out in a career as a coach, and I had all these A's and I had a B in PE. And it's just, he walks to the table and all he sees is the B and P. I'm like, no, you focus on the A's. But that made me work really hard. My mother was, oh, you did a wonderful job. But it's something about daddy, in the way that daddy speaks into the life of his son or his daughter.
Yes.
You talk about, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. Tell me about that. If you stay ready, I like that.
Well, I mean, there's opportunities waiting on us.
Absolutely.
God is preparing us all for something. You just have to be ready for it. So if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready.
If you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready.
You can't cheat life.
And your book, it just has such scriptural or biblical integration, because that's just study to show yourself approved unto God, a workman that need not be ashamed. You have to be ready. As a pastor, I got to be ready for whatever. I don't know the question because I'm the one who's receiving the question. So I don't always, but I have to be prepared. And I love that it really inspired me and spoke to me and said to me, wake up, what are you doing right now? You need to be ready for opportunity, because we pray and we say that we want opportunity to come. Okay, but you're not ready for it. So we should stop praying. I saw this post today to stop praying for things that you're not ready to handle. And so we have to make sure that our behaviors and our actions are in alignment with what we say we want, with our affirmations. Sacrifice. I have, if there were a message that I could read between the lines of your book, sacrifice is a big deal. You aren't doing enough work until it hurts.
Right. It doesn't count. It doesn't count. A reporter asked Muhammad Ali, how many sit-ups does he do? And he said he doesn't know. He doesn't start counting them until it hurts. So the easy ones don't count. And that's pretty strong, pretty deep.
That's strong.
Yeah.
That's strong.
Yeah.
Wow. One of my father's best friends used to teach about sacrifice, and growing up in the church, he would say, you really haven't given until it hurts.
Yes.
And when I read that, it took me back to Reverend George Monroe, because he would constantly say, if it's a sacrifice, it's got to get you some, it hurts somewhere. So he would tell us to give, and not just, he would not be talking about money. He would talk about yourself, of your life. And so when I read that portion of your book, I thought right back to those rudimentary places in my life where the places that I got my foundation. So life is a maze. You talk about a maze and how we can kind of get confused. We can wander around. I personally coined my own phrase out of that. I kind of helped to co-author you a little bit in that chapter. I said, life is a maze for which we need an amazing God. So when we're going through, yeah.
I like it.
So I kind of got that off of your creds to you. But I said, life is a maze for which we need an amazing God. So you talk a lot about that journey and how we need to have our faith. One thing that I've heard, I heard Jonathan Vincent say this. Jonathan said that when he first went into the military, he said that he would tell, as a chaplain in the military, he would tell the guys on the front line, look, I can't tell you what to believe, but whatever you believe, you need to make sure that it works not on your happy days, but when you're on the front line, when you are in battle. And so I thought that was interesting. What would you say to a young man who is struggling in some areas where he's about to give up, and perhaps he's down on hope, he's down on his faith? What would you say?
I would say that you are not your circumstances.
Oh, that's awesome. You are not your circumstance.
You're not. It's just something that you're going through, and you have to know that. You have to know that all people go through. You're not the only one going through. Everybody you see that look like they're winning, or everybody you see that look successful, they've gone through, and some are still going through. So I want young boys to know that you're not the only one. You're not by yourself.
Right. And I often say that happiness is not what's happening to you. Happiness is not what happens to me. It is the choice that I make about what's happening. It's how I react to it. So I love that. Your cheat codes I kind of talked about, and I gave the example. Shout out to my mother.
This is water. But go ahead. Don't you think I'm over here drinking?
Shout out to my mom, but my mom loves your recipes. And so you talk about your cheat codes, and you talked about how at Chevyland, which I bought a vehicle from you.
You did.
And so you talk about Mr. Nelson.
Yes. Phenomenal man. Phenomenal mentor, phenomenal man.
You're a Wiley College graduate, but you mentioned that having lived beyond Wiley College, you were in school with Mr. Nelson. He was the professor on the job.
Yes, 100% the professor.
100%.
Yes. See, God places people in our life when we need them.
When we need them, stop. Pause for effect. When we need them.
Yes.
Yes, that's important. Okay.
And you have to be spiritually connected and open and non-judgmental, because it could be a white person, a black person, a kid, it could be an older person. He speaks through people all the time. And so Henry Nelson was that person for me in 2003 when I got to Chevyland. That God used tremendously to just show me what work ethic was and what professionalism was and what customer service was. He taught me that and didn't know he was teaching me.
So a nugget that we can take home is that when somebody tells you what success looks like, you always upgrade that. because
Yeah.
when you came into the dealership, they told you that selling 4 or 5 cars a month was what you do on average. But you see this guy over here who's selling 30 cars a month,
Yeah.
30, 40 cars. So you're saying to yourself, if he can do it, then so you had to take that 4 to 5. And am I right? You've sold 40 cars a month?
Yes, the most I've sold is actually 57, but
Wow.
on record it was 43 because I was so busy I had to give some to other salesmen. Yes.
So you took what they told you coming in the door and you did multiplication on it. You had an exponential viewpoint of what success was going to look like for you.
100%. Back to my grandmother. So
Right.
if I see anybody doing something and it's something I want to do, I believe I can do it because of the confidence my grandmother instilled in me.
That's truly amazing to me, that you had that experience. And you talked about how you went to weddings, you went to funerals, you went to
church services,
especially church services, birthday
parties,
parties,
all the time. People would see, I would go to 4 or 5 events in one day. And even today, if you look at my Facebook page, I know people think, how is it 10 of him? how many Pat Browns is it? How is he all these places?
Right.
Yeah, so you know.
Truly a child of God, just everywhere, huh? So you talk about how and let me go back to that, because a lot of people would just think that Patrick is just out partying and just having a good time. And so there's a difference between you partying and you actually handling your business. Am I right about that? So people would look and they would think that you're Mr. Social, but you're really Mr. Customer Service, and you're handling business, and you really truly care about the people. It's not about the sale, it's about making their life and making. One thing I remember about the sale that you did with me was making sure that it was practical for me long term, making sure that it was what I want. No, that doesn't. Are you sure you want this? This is what it looks like. I see you more like those things. I really thought were important, that you kind of customize. So it was not that it was just customer service, but it was customized care is what I would call it. You had customized care for each person who was coming in, and I really thought that was important, and something we should highlight. Now, when I first met you, you were not much of a smiler.
No.
I mean, not at all. I think it was. I like not at all. Chapter 3 was like refreshing, because when you talk about smiling, I'm thinking from the point of view of I had to go back and I had to start thinking about when I first saw you smile, right? And what came to me was, what did I feel? What did I think? What I felt like a door opened. And I'm going to tell you, I did not see you smile. There was one particular conversation I had with you by phone that I didn't see you smile, but I heard it. And that's so significant, was that I could hear it in you and I could tell what your expressions were. And it's just when the action took place, there was a burst. So there was it was words, it was things that were hiding behind that smile that wanted out. And it was just time for it to come forth. And you were testifying to me and telling me some things that were going great in your life at the time. You had come out of homelessness, you were coming out of bankruptcy and some other things, and just praising God for it. So, I think it was important for you to tell those young men, you say at the beginning, and I love that you give a quote at the beginning of each chapter. You say, your smile doesn't show your weakness, it shows your strength.
Yes, 100%. Took me a while to learn that. But
right.
Being able to smile it's showing strength, because we all have reasons we could not be smiling. We all have reasons
Absolutely.
that we could now be smiling, but knowing that it's gonna be okay, knowing that it's okay, you gotta smile. You gotta be happy.
Knowing.
And you gotta show that to other people. Other people need that. And you either going to cause somebody to go up, or you may be the reason they go down. So anytime you can uplift anybody else through just your personality, that's a plus.
Romans 8:28 paraphrase says, and we know all things work together for our good. And that's like the A part of that scripture. And I often, when I preach that, I tell people it does not say, and we feel like all things work together for our good. It doesn't say, and maybe things will work. It says, this is affirmative. This is what we know. And I like that you stressed that, this is something that we can be confident in, knowing that everything's going to be okay. That might be difficult to convince someone, but I think you coming from the place that you have started, having the friends like Rufus, having the friends like King Ken, and so many more that I could think of that were not mentioned in your book. I think the fact that you can still smile is just simply phenomenal.
Yes, it is. It is.
And that's an excellent entry point to chapter 4, which talks about, you start that chapter with a poem by Maya Angelou, who talked about phenomenal woman.
Yes.
And you start to talk about women. But I really like what you said, and the brothers need to hear this. They need to talk like this to the lady. You said, whatever you give the right, that was very important. So I'm huge on adjectives. I feel like when adjectives are used, we need to stop and see, why was that adjective used? So whatever you give the right woman, she will enhance it.
Yes, 100%. That's the key to life. The key to life, I mean, I could talk, it was a tough chapter, first of all. It's a very tough chapter to
You got pretty vulnerable there.
Yes, but I wanted to be transparent because it's life. And if I'm writing a book to help people, then it's not about avoiding, what could be appeared to be shortcomings or mistakes, because there are no mistakes, they're just lessons. So, yeah.
That chapter, so I'm kind of, I'm weird about some stuff, and so I'll say that, but that chapter kind of drops right down in the middle of your book. Like you've got 8 chapters, but chapter 4 is like the center point of it. And you know that God did this thing with a purpose, to let you place that particular chapter just right in there, and it kind of sits in between everything. So when you start to talk about these phenomenal women, it's like the next couple of chapters start to do something different. We see a transition in the book, but we see why and how that transition happened. You talked about phenomenal woman number 1. She taught you, she was like, what, 5 years old?
Oh, yes, Yvonne. I don't even want to say her name, I'm sorry.
Yes. She's 5?
Yeah, we was kindergarten.
So that tells me that what we pour into our daughters early, well, hey, but she did say she needs to shout out, because I think that she is awesome. At the age of 5, somebody poured something into her. And that's why we've got to be mindful what we say and what we do around our sons and our daughters. Now, that brings me to this point, that women are so important. That's why I feel like women need to read this book, because we are an important part, and you showed the entirety of your life, that women were right there, and they were just, it's like, I have this piece of the puzzle, you have that piece of the puzzle, she has that piece of the puzzle, and somebody was just kind of putting those, where there may have been holes in your life. Here's that patch, that fits right there. So phenomenal woman number 1 was a 5-year-old. And this girl taught you the power of affirmation at age 5.
She did. because
Wow.
she was so stunning to me. And in my little mind, I knew I was not on her level. So I had to build my confidence up early. I had to
You
tell
had to build
myself
up your confidence.
early.
So you had to start telling yourself something.
Yes, I had to start telling myself, I say, you look good enough, you fast enough, you know, you little. I say, you fast enough, you can dance. She's gonna like you. She's gonna like you. I started telling myself that like early. She's gonna like you. You're gonna make her laugh today. You're gonna say something, she's gonna laugh at it.
Wow.
This was in kindergarten.
I gained from that we are always on play. You know, it's like, you remember the old, whatever you call it, the little cassette thing? We're always really on stage. We're always on play. So at 5 years old, we're influencing.
Yes.
And being influenced.
Yes.
Wow.
It started early. Started real early.
The power of a self-talk. So phenomenal woman number 2, she gave you the permission to laugh. She gave you that permission to, Proverbs 17, I think 22 says that laughter is a medicine. So she gave you plenty medicine, right?
Plenty medicine. Funniest woman I know. funniest, most open woman I know. At that time. At that time. Let's say at that time.
So she helped, and that's where you got your gift, destiny.
Yes, 100%.
That's where you got. Now, you were determined, and you were 22 when Destiny was born?
Yes.
You had a determination that was unusual for a 22-year-old, for a young person at that time. It was hands down, no option for you. It was just no option for you to be a dad.
No, it was no option. It immediately became the most important thing to me. I didn't know immediately. I didn't know completely how I was going to do it, but it was the most important thing to me immediately. Destiny Brown being born was like, it was a life changer for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I knew I had to be a father.
You never act like you had options. It was, everything was, this is how it is, period. There's no room for discussion on it.
Nah, no room for discussion. I'm going to be in her life. I'm going to be heavily involved. And that was it.
I recall you saying things to me about phenomenal woman number 2. And you mentioned one time that I'd call you and you told me you'd call me back. You're okay? Sure, I'll call you back. And you were handling a situation. You and phenomenal woman number 2 were not together, but you were handling a situation because that's where your daughter was.
Yes.
I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and I still would to this day. Like, you have a child by somebody, and they're more than just a person. They like, you're a part of them now. They're a part of you, and what affects them affects your child. So, yes.
Phenomenal woman number 3. I feel like I'm just doing an unveiling here. She taught you self-control and consistency. I added that one. She taught you some self-control and consistency. Tell me about that. Now, she was quite a lady. You met her at Harrah's Casino working, right?
I did. I'm not calling any names though. We're not saying any names.
Right.
But I did. I met her there working, and at that time I was, young and full of energy, and me and another friend of mine both was like, ooh, and so once he started dating her, she became off limits, and we became friends. And I learned a lot from that friendship, that you can be friends with a attractive woman, and there not be anything physical between them. So that was important to me.
people have a difficult time with platonic relationships. And I mean, I guess I wouldn't ask you the question, do you think that platonic relationships can be between men and women? Obviously so.
Yes.
But you have several sisters, you have several close female friends,
Yes.
and you pour into them. And
Yes.
it doesn't matter who they are, what level, what profession they are, you pour into them. Why? What makes you, I mean, because it's an unusual relationship that you have with these women.
So I'm glad you asked me, because people need to know. So my mom, my grandmother, and my aunt raising me, I learned the power of women. Like, it's so powerful. So I have these women they really are my sisters. Yourself, Gavina, Miranda. I have people that, you know, if you pour into them and just be their friend, what you get back is amazing. And it's you know, you seen the movie Black Panther? You seen Black Panther?
Yeah.
T'Challa?
Yeah.
T'Challa, what did he have around him all the time? With the people that protected him with the spears were an army of women. And he wasn't sexually involved or anything with none of those women. And it's
and
one
you
of my
saw his mother on the scene.
yes. Yes. I mean, in the book I talk about being a mystery, and that's one of my mysteries. Like I just learned that early on from my grandmother, mother, and aunt. That if you surround yourself with the right women and you respect them and treat them right, it's no limit what, you know, the things you can do.
And you bring an interesting another interesting focus, which is we reap what we sow, and that doesn't have to be bad. So if we're pouring in good things, we're going to get something good out. You know, I tell people you don't get an apple orange. An apple orange is a hybrid, and it's shady. So if you plant an apple seed, that's what your expectation is. And our expectation should be that we are happy if we get 2 apples versus 1 from 1 seed. And I think that's what happens for you. Whatever you pour in is what you're getting out. You're not a shady person, so we don't have this hybrid of an apple orange coming out of you, but we know what we're getting.
Right.
We know what we're getting.
100%.
Phenomenal woman number 4. She taught you hope.
So we just gonna go through all of them. Huh?
We're gonna go through them.
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness!
But she taught you hope.
Yeah. So yeah, number 4 was like the one, you know, like made me realize that I am somebody, that I can be on a certain, I don't want to say level, but how she grew up and how I grew up was so different. And so I never even imagined myself with somebody like that. You know? So it was
trophy.
Yes. Yes. And so yeah, it was I lose myself even trying to talk about it. Because you know, growing up as a Black male, we're not, which is wrong, we're not taught about love. And we're taught to get as many girls you can get. And you know, that's other men tell boys that. And as you get older, you start to realize, you know, that's not really what's up. And so I had to even get her to take me serious. I had to carry myself a certain way, and I had to build this confidence in her that, hey, okay, I see what you are, where you come from, and what you're not gonna tolerate. And so I had to become that. She grew me up. She grew me up. She don't know that, but she grew me up.
You mentioned that she didn't see you.
I did. Because
that helps me out.
oftentimes, this don't knock on her, just people, period. Oftentimes, we're not who we're going to become. But we know if it's inside of you, you see it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I see myself already 10, 20 years from now. But most people, they only see me for where I am right now.
Mm-hmm.
And every day I wake up, I'm telling myself that day, God, make me better. That day I'm trying to make better decisions. Now I don't make it through that day every time, but every single day that goes on, I get closer and closer to this person that I'm becoming. And so, and it's nobody's fault. Other people oftentimes can't see it. So it's not their fault. It ain't their fault. But it happens.
I wonder how many lost Black boys, because I've not used that term enough in this setting, but I wonder how many lost Black boys are showing up, being present, and you know what that takes, what goes into that. You just don't wake up and get out of the bed to be present. I wonder how many of them are preparing themselves and they're following their roadmap only to get someplace where they are not seen.
Oh, it happens.
And they're not seen at their best.
Yes.
So that put things in perspective for me when you said that, because who's been in my view that I didn't see? That's the question. And as I've gotten older, I've started to ponder that a whole lot more than when I was not seeing them. And that doesn't go for men, that goes for opportunities to be able to mentor people or to, take that opportunity that was right there, but I didn't see the person for who they could become. And that's why I told you early on, and I mentioned to our listening audience, that this book puts me in the mind of becoming. With First Lady Michelle Obama, because that's kind of how she talks. She goes from, hey, I grew up over here. I didn't grow up in a gated community, to this is what I did. I went to, and for you, I went to Wiley College. Praise ye the Lord. And now I've done this. I've been salesman of the month. I've been an entrepreneur. I've done this. But she goes back and she lets us know that the White House is our house. It's anybody who feels like he or she can believe big enough to be there. And so when you talked about Phenomenal Woman number 4, I could relate to her and I could relate to you. That was powerful. And I really wanted to bring that out, how that we can live, we can walk, we can talk with someone that's not seeing them.
Right, in her offense, it was some of that was on me as well, because like we know who we going to be, but we're not always being that person.
Or looking like we're going to become.
Or looking like we're going to become that person.
Right. So we haven't given people the clues that they need to even take us seriously.
Yes.
So it makes me, and that's why I say this kind of made me sit on both sides of the table, because I have a habit of playing small. And so when people don't encourage me, I'm like, man, nobody's encouraging me. But I'm not acting like I need encouragement. I'm not doing, so I have to make sure that it's a balance. So I appreciated Phenomenal Woman number 4. Number 5 taught you the power of sacrifice. She had master's degree, job.
Yes. She has. Yeah, she was a. I don't want to. Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
But the sacrifice was, she's the mother of Chandler, my 12-year-old son, and she basically gave her life to have Chandler. And so, she was the first woman that I seen work as hard as she worked, and I seen do the things that she did. No knock on none of the other women; they were hard workers too, but just doing something different. And so, but when I talk about sacrifice, I talk about her giving her life to have you know, our son. That showed me strength. I knew that, well, he's my motivation. You know, I love all my kids equally, but when you have a child whose mom is not living, you look at life different. You have to be here. You have to try to make good decisions. You have to try to be the best person you can be. You know, I can't do anything silly to put myself in a position to be murdered or to be in some type of foolishness, because that would be selfish. Then he wouldn't have any parents here. So, yeah.
Which births my next comment, because I was going to say to you, ask you, well, I was actually going to ask the question about Chandler. We know that Jesus Christ is our Savior, but, and when I asked this question, knowing that, I know that, but do you think that Chandler saved you?
100%. Each one of my kids, each relationship saved me. 100%. I was, and then Chandler, and it's like, okay, it's a new focus. It's almost like I say in the book, you find yourself in your lowest places. That's when you truly find yourself. When you're in your low places, that's when you find yourself. So 100%.
And Zoe was kind of one of those, she was just one of those cheery things that is, I mean, that gift that comes along that you just look at and you're like, wow.
Yes. So Zoe was, well, that's my whole time in my life, I can say, you know, it was right.
Right.
She was planned. It was,
you
know, I felt that. No other situation is wrong, but it was that what she was planned. We got married, we planned her, she was born. And so I know what that feels like. She gave me that. You know, each child gave me something. She gave me that.
So do you realize you've been a young father? I'm going to be very careful when I get to Austin, I promise you. You've been a young father. You've been a planned father. You've been a father who's been saved by this situation.
Yes.
And kind of a shaken father and a single father.
Yes.
And then you've been an older father. Watch that.
Yeah. Austin is an amazing little boy. People be saying, they say he's my grandbaby. Because he's 6. But you know, yeah. I mean, I love all my kids. They motivate me. They are my why. Each one is very, very, very special to me. So,
you definitely stress that. Now, phenomenal woman number 4, we got to back up to her, because after phenomenal woman number 5 passed away.
Yes.
You're back here and you want to get things together with phenomenal woman number 4.
Yes, because I felt, go ahead.
Phenomenal woman number 4 knows that there's Chandler.
Yes, she does.
She knows that there's Chandler. She's also been active in Destiny's life.
Yes, that's why I say she's an amazing woman. And it takes a lot to, and I want people to know this. It takes a lot to realize, like, we're friends now, but sometimes the love fades. And there are things that you should do. They have marriage counseling and things like that that I didn't do, that I encourage people to do. Because as Black people, we don't go to counselors. We think we got it all together. We think we can figure it out. We don't think we need nobody talking to us. We don't want no counselor, no pastor telling us what we need to do in our life. But now that I'm 46, I want to be transparent and talk to young married couples and tell them, hey, listen, you know, go see counseling, because it still may be something there. But that's neither here nor there. We're here now, and we're good friends, and we don't have any issues. We co-parent, and it works out great. And I respect all of the phenomenal women. I have no negative relationships with them or their families. And so, and it's because what I do know about a mother, a good mother, regardless of what your relationship is, if you're attempting daily to be a good father, everything will be okay.
My uncle said something that came to surface when reading your book. He stated, he said, I never divorced Betty, which is my Aunt Betty. He says, he says, I divorced Betty, but I never divorced my sons. He had 3 sons with her. And that was quite powerful for me to hear my Uncle Floyd say that. He made sure to take care of the sons. There were times growing up where I felt like he robbed her of the opportunity to spend time with her sons because the boys were with him. And I didn't understand it at the time, but they needed a man in their life.
Very important.
And so he allowed his sons to live with him, and they had an adult arrangement among themselves so that the children could get what they needed. They were awesome friends. You know, my Aunt Betty has remarried. My Uncle Floyd, of course, has remarried. And the 4 of them have a relationship that when they come together, they are concerned about the children. And for the most part, other than what we as children do to ourselves, the boys are healthy because of that. And I feel like you did the same thing. You said, I'm not going to divorce my children. I know that we have moved on, or, you know, perhaps we separated or we're not together. And that makes for a wonderful relationship.
Yes, it does. 100%.
So chapter 5 is about, you do a chapter and you just have gay. You're a heterosexual Black man, but yet you are, I like what you say. You say, just be you. Some people would have a problem. Don't leave the broadcast right now. Stay with me. Some people have an issue with a pastor saying, just be you when it comes to this particular topic. But I think that for me, helping people, for me, ministering to people, I don't want to minister to your representative.
Yes, that's good stuff.
Yeah. I need you to come totally in the room so I know who you are. So I need you to just be you. And I think that chapter was liberating. And I thought it was quite informative that you put a number at the end of the chapter. And everybody stay with me on this, because we have a lot of lost Black boys who are either committing suicide because they don't know where they fit into society. I'd rather have them alive where I can talk to them, where they can have someone there, than for them to be dead or to live a lie.
No, yes, correct. And that's why I put it in there. You know, I don't live that lifestyle. Well, we can't pretend that it's not there. And you have young boys and young men that struggle with it. Like you said, you know, the suicide numbers are real. So
and homelessness. Let me speak to that, because we have a lot of homelessness that is attached to a lot of young people being put outside the home. So I want to say to parents, if you need counseling to know how to deal with your child who has chosen a different lifestyle, it's you know, we need to talk about that. We're still, I think, in Mental Health Month, so we want to talk about that. We want to make sure that you know that you can gain that footage of not letting your child go homeless. Chapter 6, manifestation. All right, you say, I find inspiration in everything around me. Everything, like everything. Everything, like everything.
Like you would think it was like the stuff I find inspiration in. You would think it was weird. The stuff I find inspiration in, like, yes, I stopped. Okay, so I stopped looking at people and started looking at God. And so when I see the sun does its job every single day. The sun can't stop shining, right?
Right.
So I find inspiration in that. You know, when I look at this oak tree in my backyard that's deeply rooted, that gets rained on, gets pooped on by birds, gets
It
peed
still keeps
on.
being a tree.
It still keeps being a tree. And so that's to me. I just find inspiration and stuff like that. That's God, you know, speaking through nature.
I heard something today, and in the discourse of conversation, it was stated that a tree gives. It doesn't take much, but it's always standing and it's always giving. That's an awesome analogy that you've placed there about, and I don't think that's weird. I think that's what we have to do. We have to start looking for those things. You mentioned in the book later on, I think it's in chapter 8, about how when you're talking to the lost Black boys, you say, we are resilient, we are this, we are that, and you said we are the sun. And so that was an excellent way to explain that to me, because I said, we are the sun, S-U-N. And so the sun does its job. It does what it's supposed to do. It is it just.
Yes. And so for me, the manifestation is just so strong, because you are what you think you are. You are exactly what you think you are. If you think you're great, you're great. If you think you're a loser, you're a loser. You are exactly what you think you are. So
I have to read from page 40. Page 40 was like, instead of poetic justice, it was like literary justice for me. So there's a paragraph, if you don't mind. You are reading where you are in life. There's still more for you to do. There is more for you to create. Has God stopped creating? You can still see God creating all throughout nature in things like tornadoes, volcanoes, and earthquakes. I'm like, what is this dude talking about? He's talking about God creating. You could have said God created flowers, God created the beautiful sun, or whatever, but you're talking about tornadoes, volcanoes, and earthquakes. And then you say all contribute to the repositioning of the earth. That was so mad. I mean, that was like amazing, because you're talking about how these things that we look at as devastation, it's a tornado, it's a volcano, it's an earthquake, but you say these things help us to reposition. So trouble helps us simply, we have to see it as our friend, right?
Yes.
And then you go on, you say God created you, and God is still creating. Whatever you have inside of you could be that thing that changes the world. It has no age limit, no height, no weight. It's inside of your mind. Your physical appearance has no bearing on your spiritual strength. Somebody needs to hear that. You might have personal issues about your height, your weight, or your age, but none of these things can limit the level that your spiritual strength can reach. That was like terrific Tuesday type stuff right there. That was literary justice for the entire book. And that caused a shift. So I really wanted readers and listeners, I want you to know that that's the kind of stuff that's in this book. Stay with me, Mr. Brown. We didn't have to, you said we didn't have access, to a bigger world like you do through the internet.
Yes.
So this chapter is, I guess, because I'm a visionary, this chapter was like where I got a little bit geeked out. So I'm a nerd. But I remember I wrote in the margin of the book, I said, but somehow we learned how to dream. So we didn't have a way. I remember when the internet came about, I was trying to learn what it was. My dear, loving, kind mother would do anything to help me to advance. And so I remember we went to Service Merchandise or someplace like that, and they had these little discs. And I was going to get a brother. I had a brother already. And so we were using word processors. I was like, no, I can go anywhere in the world. That's what my friend told me. I can go anywhere in the world with this thing called the internet. And so my mom started looking for ways for me to get on the internet. And we did that. And I remember the dial up and the days of AOL and so on and so forth. But prior to that, you talked about, and this is going to lead to one of my next guests, Dr. Adrienne Moore, who's authored a children's book. You talked about how you would go home and you would pull your encyclopedias.
Yes, I love it.
You would look up words like pyramid and Egyptian.
Yes, I would. I would look these words up, and then I would look at the pictures, because you know our encyclopedias had pictures, and then
Right.
I would dream. I would see myself, you know, at these places.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So that to me was the power of imagery. That's the power of being able to imagine. And that's what Dr. Moore, and I'll talk about that with her, but that's what Dr. Moore talks about, giving these children something to see and to imagine. So just imagine being a little boy, being able to have a story read to you about another little Black boy, not somebody that you don't relate to. And I think it's powerful. That brought me home to something my father did. So after my dad died a couple of weeks back at work, a gentleman walked up to me and he says, with tears in his eyes. So I'm like, whoa, brother, you know, because I'm trying to keep it together. But he says, are you Coach Cothran's daughter? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, so the guy just starts to have tears in his eyes, and he's starting to talk about how that, he was like, you were the little girl who was on the back of who's behind Coach. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, on the bus. So he tells the story that I'd become more familiar with as he started to tell it, of how my father took the school bus and he picked up these little boys on a Saturday morning, and he took them out of their communities and he brought them and he let them see our home. And they were like, Coach, you live like that. And, you know, he was just a hardworking man. There was nothing to live like that. Best believe, we were just hardworking people. But then he takes them and he travels around the city, and they look at these mansions that are in Shreveport. And they're like, oh, and on. He's like, your dad gave me the right to dream. One of the most powerful things ever said to me. Yeah, he said he gave me the right to dream.
That's true.
So you talk about how we need to give our sons that right to dream. You talked about how you did this for yourself, that somebody whet your palate and gave you a different taste than what Hollywood could offer. And how you and Phenomenal Woman 4 would go to a home that was about half an acre, and you would step out. I mean, you put the car in park and you said, this is where we will live. The power of affirmation.
Yes, 100%. It's important to build that in our young boys and young men, and even older people. It's important for them to continue to dream, to continue to believe in themselves, and continue to dream. You know, you're never too old or there are no limits. And so that was important that I put that in. That was very important.
Well, I have something that I say, affirmation, which has confirmation, leads to manifestation. And you definitely talk about confirming those affirmations for those young men by constantly speaking into them. The word of the Lord says in Romans 4th chapter, verses 17 through 20, basically that we can speak those things that be not as though they were, making those affirmations. Habakkuk 2, 1 through 2, write the vision, make it plain. So those are some of those things that cause things to manifest. You talked about how, going back to the dealership, that you talked about, you challenged yourself and you said, I will do this. And so you've not just walked through life, but you have talked yourself through life.
100%. It's daily. It's going on daily. God is constantly and consistently speaking inside of us all the time. And so you have to quiet the mess of the world so you can hear his voice. And so it's a daily thing.
So you meditate?
I do. I would call it meditation. Well, I picture it. All of my thoughts I write down. It starts first with me seeing, and then I immediately write it down. Like I have stuff, you know, from this I'm going to write down, and then I say it. Once I write it down, I repeat it until it becomes real.
Until it becomes the fiber of your being.
Yes, 100%. 100%.
Chapter 7, right circle. No matter where you find yourself in life, be it prison or Wall Street, the people you choose to be around the most can easily determine what your outcomes or your height or your depth is going to be.
Yes.
You mentioned something that, and you were very kind about it, but you just kind of had to hit it. There will be snakes in the room.
Oh, 100%. 100%
Mm-hmm.
there will be snakes in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I was kind about it. Because everybody, TJ talks about the three types of friends. You have your comrades.
Mm-hmm.
They're for what you're for.
Mm-hmm.
You have your constituents. No.
Mm-hmm.
Your constituents are for what you're for. Your comrades are for you as long as you're against what they're against. And then you have your confidants. They're for you, regardless of what you're against or for. So, you have to kind of learn those things as you grow and get older.
Jealousy. I think lost Black boys. I have to mention that. I think a lot of what we're seeing as far as killing is going on, and in our young people is that there's a lot of jealousy there. I mean, it doesn't matter, and we're seeing people from gated communities as well as from rough places being involved in these killings, all because of the snakes in the room and the jealousy. So you give mad props to your boys. You talk about Carlos Jackson, who at a very early age lost his parents, but was kind of the wise guy. And Carlos has a calm about him.
He does. Anybody knows him knows that.
Yeah, he has and it's a consistent type of thing. Marcus B. Hall. I like that you call him He-Man.
Yeah, he's just the boldest guy I know. Just bold. Just always
bold.
Been strong.
You talked about how at 12 years old he embodied this kind of man type of.
Yeah, this macho. We all see the athlete, the superior athlete. So yeah, he brought the boldness out in
I thought about him, and he has a wonderful family. He has a loving wife and children. He a very strong man, and you were so, again, one of those places of literary justice where you talked about I'll call him B, Marcus B. Hall. You said that he was strong, and you go through this description of him as if he is just this mighty guy. But then isn't it today he has some other gifts that he has to offer, right?
Oh, 100%. He's a great father. No, go ahead.
His talent for transforming a room.
Oh, 100%. He's an interior decorator.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he works for the government, but his love is decorating. That's
who
would
have ever thought about that? That this
right.
He-Man, and I wanted to bring that forward. So it goes back to you got to be you, because he has, and it's amazing the vision that he has. He has a different type of way of using his vision. His vision is used to transform rooms, where mine may be that I will look at you and I can be able to say, okay, and coach you as a person and help you with arranging life. It's like he's in the room and life's the room for him, and he can put things where they need to be that way. I thought that was interesting that this strong guy, and that's why we have to be careful that we don't kill the creativity in our sons, but we nurture that creativity.
100%. I agree. If you're right, that's it. Nothing deep to say on that, but you're right.
Carlos is he has a beautiful family as well, two wonderful daughters, and just a man that wants what's best for you. And And it's kind of the type that keeps you centered and says, hey man, I'll support you, but have you thought about this?
100%. And you need people around you like that. You know, you
How
need
long have
people
you,
that, go ahead.
go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
How long have you been friends with him?
Carlos,
Yes,
I met him when I was 4.
4. So is he your longest, the person that you've had the longest of all your friends?
Yes, he's the longest.
Wow.
Killer. Yeah, appreciate it. Let's like,
Wow.
mm-hmm.
Attorney Shantae Wells.
Yes, good guy, great guy.
Great guy. Grew
Yes.
up in the Jack's Quarter.
And the Jazz Porters, yeah.
And y'all, you have to say it like that, the Jack's Quarter. If you're not from Jack's Quarter, you got to say the Jack's Quarter. And you better know somebody in Jack's Quarter if you're caught in Jack's Quarter.
You better, especially in the 90s,
Yeah.
especially in the 80s and the 90s. You can't, most definitely.
You talked about the movie Colors. So I remember my older sister, Allison, French braiding my hair. And my other sister had no time to help me with my hair because we were so excited to be going to the movies. And if you're from Shreveport, you know about the Joy Theater. We went to the Joy Theater to see Colors, and my life was never the same because yeah.
I already know.
And I was kind of like, oh my God, people do that. So I think I needed therapy after Colors. But it was the truest story of the late 80s, early 90s.
Right.
You were a boy. You were a boy during that time.
Oh yeah, it was a tough time for Shreveport. It was a very tough,
Really?
rough time. Like, especially for Black males in Shreveport.
So we turned the corner.
We did, 100%.
So do you think we can turn the corner now?
I think we can. I 100% think we can. I mean, that's why I wrote the book. We just have to get in the minds of our young men. We have to encourage them to just make better choices. And so books like this would do that. And shows like this would do that. So yes, 100% I believe.
You mentioned earlier on how we need to diversify our circle. And in the racial climate that we have in America and really across the globe right now, I want to punch that. I want to talk about that just for a second here before we close. I want to talk about how that we, in our nation right now, we have a lot going on that is nothing new. It's just at a different height right now. So you talked about diversifying your circle, making sure that you're inclusive of everybody who God sends to help you. And that person just may not look like you. They're probably not gonna have the same chin, the same size lips, nose, whatever. You have to be able to open yourself up to who God is sending. And you talked about this earlier too. I was listening. You said when we need them, because that's what God does.
That's 100% what God does. I've had several people God has sent to me that I had no idea. And some of them have been white. Some of them have been women, men. And you have no idea. You have to be open and ready and willing to receive, those people when God placed them in your life.
Sophia Nelson talks about, in her book, The Woman Code, she says that you gotta make sure you got your front row right. The folks in your front row. And she talks about how, that table, the folks who you're going to sit with at the table, you're being honored. You got to make sure those people are there. One thing I'd like to add to that is that we have to show up. It does me no good to have a front row who's present, but I'm not present. So you say some things in one of the chapters about, you tell the gentleman to always keep their word. You tell them to never play sick. And there's like 5 things that you tell them in that particular chapter. I won't tell everybody everything because I've just about talked about your book. But you tell them, you give them these nuggets for how they should conduct themselves. So if people are showing up in your life, then you need to be present for your life. You need to be present. I think a lot of times when you're in mentorship and I know one of the difficult places for me is not allowing the person who I need to help to hurt me.
Yes, that's
That's a balance.
that's a tough balance, but it's a
Yes.
balance. It's a balance, and
Yeah.
so yeah, it's a tough balance, and especially for Black boys and Black men, because you don't want to give up on a friend. You know, you don't want to give up on a friend, but you can't. Some things you just can't. You can't allow them to
Yeah.
make you become what they are if it's something that's not positive for you. And so, you know, in any relationship, it's always a battle. That's in any relationship, you know.
My niece reminded me.
When let me say this, I just want to say, like when Rufus was murdered, it ate at me. It still eats at me because I hate I couldn't save him. I wanted him to live. I wanted him to be here. I wanted him to travel with me when God starts taking me around talking to young men. I wanted him to be there with me. So, you know, it's tough, and it's something that we deal with as Black males. You know, we always were different. He had a good upbringing. He had a good mother. He just made different choices than I made, and so that's tough, very tough. Because I loved him like a brother.
My niece reminded me. She's 11, and she said to me, she says, you know, you're supposed to put your mask on before you put somebody else's mask on. And she said, you know, like in an airplane. And I was like, wow, she is already getting there and having to learn that at 11. And I'm like, wow. So in your book, Lost Black Boys, I see that tucked inside of that a little bit. When you tell them sometimes you've got to be healthy. Well, you have to be healthy before you can help somebody. I think that was pretty good. That brings me to chapter 8. We've got about 4 minutes here. In chapter 8, you said, don't give up on who you truly are, being your true self. Now, the end of the book, I felt like, and I feel like there's more to come after this. If I may speak prophetically in that vein, I know that God's got more for you to add to this, whether it be in another book or revision. But you said don't ever stop being truly who you are. The end of the book, it's as if you were walking on hot coals of fire. Is what came to me. You kind of swept by some stuff, and I'm like, no. You need to come and attack that. You hit hot topics and you kept it moving. You talked about, and I want to express these in our last few minutes, mental illness. You talked about homelessness. You talked about fights, separation, breakups, bankruptcy, court battles, close calls with police, lies, harassment, and embarrassment. You as one person went through all of that.
Yes, I did.
2 minutes.
I did. I mean, so I study people, especially spiritual people. And I don't know any that hadn't gone through or hadn't been tested or hadn't been tried. So going through those things, I just picture these people, even yourself. Like, I've been knowing you a long time. You've been succeeding for a long time, but I know what you do. That's a mystery. Like I say in our working, I know what you do that the people don't see.
Right.
And so, you know, you can't ever give up. You can't ever give up. We all have a purpose. We wouldn't be here. We're not just here. We're in a weird time right now where a lot of people hadn't even survived this time thus far because of COVID, and we're here. That's not a mistake. So as long as you're here, you have purpose. So you can't give up, no matter who you are. You have purpose. We all have purpose.
I have to say this as we prepare to close. You always end conversations this way. You know, if the Lord says the same.
Right.
You know, you always give him that prioritization.
I do, and it can be misconstrued from people that's not having faith. But my John B, the man who I say was like my grandfather, used to say it, and it's the truth. Sometimes we got to be careful. We got to make sure we're doing what God wants us to do, and not what we want to do. So I know what I want, but I'm also okay if this is also what God wants for me, and that's what I mean when I say if the Lord said the same. That's what I mean, because I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know everything God knows. So yeah, I might want to be a car salesman, but God may have been saying 10 years ago, you're going to be an author. And I, so you get what I'm saying? We have to be careful, car selling is just what I do or what I did, but I'm not a car salesman. And so at the end of the day, I'm a child of God. That's what I am. I'm a person that follows. I'm a man of God. That's what I am. You get everything else you see is just something I'm doing, but I'm first and foremost a man of God. And so that's why I say if God said so.
I'm not going to mess that up. I couldn't have closed out better than that. I'm not going to mess that up. Y'all, get your book. So Lost Black Boys, for Lost Black Boys who had to find themselves when no one else could, you have got to get this book. I'm telling you, I have not done due diligence here tonight with the time frame that we have. Lord say the same, and I might bring him back to talk about the book, okay?
Hey, let's tell them where they can get the book at. They can get it on Amazon.com.
You talk about your book, talk about it. Look, Lost Black Boys, learn how to talk about yourself. You talk about that in the book too. Don't be afraid when people are helping you. Hey,
yes.
Yourself.
Yeah, it's a roadmap. It's a cheat code. It's what we need. We see people winning and thriving, and we don't know how. It's in the book. The book is going to help young Black boys and young Black men, and even parents make better decisions. It's in the book. Go to Amazon.com, get the book.
And let me just say that at the back of the book, there's literally a life map at the back of the book, literally, that can help you. And it's Patrick Brown's life map or his life plan, but he helps you to create your own. I've really been hoping that he'd come up with some sort of workbook to go with the book, but I won't speak that on him because he's all these things.
Look at your spiritual self. It's already in the works.
Already in the works. There you go. So y'all get the book, please. Parents, especially those ladies who you're raising your sons by yourself, I want you to get this book. I want you to join me in a couple of weeks. My next guest is going to be Dr. Adrienne Moore. We're going to talk about her kids' book. Keep following me here on Facebook. I am Beryl Cawthorn. And of course, follow my friend, follow Mr. Patrick Marche Brown. He is Patrick M. Brown on Facebook. And so you're going to see him on more outlets, and you're going to see more about Lost Black Boys. Look, I am just a peon in his world. He was with Les Brown a couple of weeks ago, so I'm just happy to be able to have had this opportunity with you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you. I'm honored. I'm privileged. This your first show, right? Your first time, right?
This is my first one.
Yeah, this is history then. We just made history.
We just made history.
We did. I enjoyed it. You know how I feel about you. You know how much I respect you. So just keep doing what you're doing. Keep blessing people, and especially women. So keep doing what you're doing. I enjoy it. I love it.
I promise. Love you too. And hey, everybody, this has been The Buzz with Dr. B. So until next time, thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you, everybody.
All right.